Hello, I'm Doran Ellen Beldotan in Sfat, and today I'd like to speak about the topic of anti-Semitism, from what it stems, and how we can eliminate it at the root. It's not going to be an easy discussion, whether one is Jewish or not. The information contained herein will be emotionally difficult to process. It was difficult for me to process it when I learned it. I didn't readily accept emotionally what I'm about to tell you. Although I saw immediately that it's true. It takes a while for it to sink in, and so I'm not going to expect the viewers to just nod their heads in agreement and say, yeah, that's it. It'll take a while before it sinks. I will try to proffer proofs from the Hebrew for what I'm saying, because it's my way to do that. Hashem has given me these instruments of proofs for the real teachings, and so thank God we don't have to take anything on faith anymore. If it can't be proven with the Hebrew, it's okay to call it into question. Since the Babylonian exile, before the Babylonian exile, Jews had only the dimmest idea of what learning Torah actually is, what it affects. Had they had a very clear understanding of the full weight and responsibility and moment of learning Torah, they would not have had to go into exile. There would have been no need for it. They would have been learning properly and behaving properly. So the very fact that they were in exile means that they had already lost the basic thrust of what we call Talmud Torah, learning Torah, is. The word Talmud means learning. It's not just the Talmud itself, it's all learning. It comes from the root Lamed Mem Daled, which means to learn, but it is also connected to the Hebrew root Yud Lamed Daled, which is to give birth to. Yeled is a child. Yoled or Yoledit is to be the progenitors of, to give birth to. So Talmud is about giving birth. Torah, equaling 611, is equal to the expression at hara, you are pregnant. When one learns Torah correctly, one becomes, Torah, by the way, is also harei at, which means here you are, and that is the opening of being betrothed. Harei at bekudeshet li, here you are sanctified unto me. So Torah is harei at. So what we see is Hashem is saying to the person learning Torah, whether male or female, because the interaction with Hashem is both male and female on both sides. Harei at, which is the beginning of you are sanctified to me. At hara, you are pregnant, and Talmud is also the actual giving birth, because Hashem is above time. These processes occur all at once. There is another root in Hebrew for learning, Hey Gimel Hey, which is to consider, to learn. Higui is meditative learning. Now, we all know that one of the terms for nations or Gentiles is goy. Higui, which is the learning, engenders hagoyim. Hagoyim is Adam and Chava. I'll show the substitution values. And so we're talking about giving birth to the nations. When a Jew learns Torah, it is not a self-edifying, just simple learning of the way learning a good book would be. It is actually becoming pregnant with God's will and giving birth to that. The word for intentions in Hebrew is kavanot. It comes from the root kaf vav nun, to intend. Those same letters appear in a different order in the word tchunot, which means one's attributes. Okay. When a Jew learns Torah, they become pregnant with God's will and immediately give birth to God's progeny. However, the progeny that comes out is in the human form. It is a representation of the human form that is the side of Israel. Because God has no form, that which Israel gives birth to has Israel's qualities. Therefore, it is very, very important that we have the proper intentions, kavanot, when we learn Torah, because that which we engender is going to have the tchunot, the attributes that are in keeping with that which we intended when we learned. Israel gives birth to all of the worlds, all of the forms in all of the worlds. The value 552, which is bincha, your son, is also Olamot, which is worlds, and it is also kol basar, all flesh. So the Jews, when they learn, engender the Gentiles, the animals, the plants, and inanimate, seemingly inanimate, it's not inanimate, seemingly inanimate matter, all of which have the forms of Israel. They all resemble Israel, Israel's internal intentions. It is very easy to understand, to see what a Jew was thinking and feeling when they gave birth to something simply by observing it. Because that which we engender when we learn has the attributes, the characteristics of that were our own intentions. So we know exactly who the Jews are when we look at the world such as it is. The worlds on all of the different levels are our children, and they look like we felt and thought at the time that they were conceived. It is therefore extremely, extremely important that when a Jew learns Torah, that they do not approach it with the presumption that the Gentiles have bad attributes. Many Jews, unfortunately, have been taught to think this way. But for a Jew, there is no such thing in describing reality, of looking at pre-existing reality and making a report on it. When we say something about reality, that's the reality that comes into existence. So if a Jew says the Gentiles have bad attributes, if they have been taught by their rabbis to believe that, that is necessarily going to be the case. Unavoidably so. If a Jew approaches their learning Torah with the presumption that we are superior to the Gentiles have basically bad attributes, we're the only peoples in the world who have really pure attributes, and so forth and so on, that is what is going to be born. And unfortunately, the Babylonian wizards, many of whom dress up as important rabbis and make people believe that they're very saintly, have brainwashed the Jews to think that way. An intelligent Jew would say, wait a second, where does that come from? What they were just created by God being negative? Like, where do those negative attributes come from? If one begins to ask that question, God gives them the honest answer, which is all of the attributes, for better and for worse, that we see in the Gentiles, in the animals, in the vegetative kingdom, in seemingly inanimate matter, are all within us. All of it. Therefore, when we sit down to learn, it is of the utmost importance that we sit down and we say to ourselves, as I sit down to learn Torah now, I know I'm going to be impregnated with God's will, and that the progeny that are going to issue forth from my learning will resemble me. And therefore, I say that I want peace for all beings. I want every Gentile to be born healthy. I want them to be born with positive attributes, beautiful attributes. I want them to be born with conditions existing in the world that will be born together with them, that will afford them the opportunities to be able to actualize and express the abilities that they are going to be born with. For the animal kingdom, we say the same. We bless them with peace. We say there should never ever be an animal who is forced to live red in claw and tooth in order to survive, that we bless them with peace. We know from the prophet Yeshayahu that if we're learning Torah correctly, that the animals that were the predators and the animals that were the prey live in peace together. And that is all dependent upon what our intentions were when we learned. If there was anything predatorial within us, that is going to be expressed in the animal kingdom and in the Gentile kingdom. Same thing for the plants. When we sit down and we learn Torah, we have to have the intention of saying that every plant that will be born as the result of my learning should have healthy properties and to give over health and strength. And in this way we will create a world in which there will be no poisonous plants. They are not meant to be poisonous. Poisonous elements only show up in the animal kingdom if we have poisonous intentions. If our intentions are entirely salubrious, so the vegetative kingdom will be entirely salubrious. And even for the inanimate matter, our intention should be that all matter should know peace and not contain tension within it, and that it should be stable like land and fertile like land and flow like water and enlighten like the light, and to bless all of the inanimate worlds with beautiful attributes so that they may serve as the bases of beautiful worlds. The highest achievement that a Jew can attain is the creation of Gentiles who are greater than we. I'll say that again, because I know that there are some Jews now that are bristling. The highest level of attainment of Talmud Torah is the creation of Gentiles who are greater than the Jews. Every good parent wants their child to be greater than we. The idea of nullification of the ego for Jews has been incorrectly taught. We are not meant to become selfless. The term for nullification of the ego is to be called what is called bטול. That is Bet, Tet, Vav, and Lamed. Those very same letters are also lטוב, for the good. And Lamed is Yihye, it will be. So the intention has to be, what I am learning now is going to be for the good. That it is for the good and it will be good. And when those are our intentions for all of the creation, then and only then is a Jew said to have reached the level of bטול. It is also טובל, by the way, which is immersion in the ritual bath. That is total immersion in God's will before learning Torah. That when we sit down, we say, I know I'm going to become pregnant with God's will now. That is going to be born. I want peace. For everything that I give birth to. I want them to be happy. I want their lives to be abundant. I want them to be challenged to bring out their strengths, but not broken. I want their lives to be good. Everything should be for the good. If a child is born deformed, God forbid, and the child discovers that the reason why they were born deformed is because one or both of their parents were irresponsible during their pregnancy, didn't take precautions for their health, that child is going to hate their parents for bringing them into the world deformed, and rightfully so. The Gentiles didn't know everything that I'm speaking to you about, but internally they somehow knew that the Jews are ultimately the ones who are responsible for what is going on in the world. And that is absolutely correct. They may think that it's because we have overweening economic power or political power. In fact, the Jews that need the economic power and the political power are the Jews that are not particularly powerful. If they were really powerful, they would be doing it directly out of Torah. Those who need those things are the lower levels of what it is to be a Jew. So if a Gentile is born morally deformed, because when we learn Torah, we did not intend that their lives would be abundant, that they would be born with beautiful abilities and traits. And we presumed before they were even conceived that they were going to be born deformed. Of course they're going to hate us. Of course they're going to hate us. We are responsible for what the Gentiles, and in fact all of the world, looks like on every level. We Jews discover who we are internally when we look at the Gentiles. When we look at them, we see the embodiment of who we are inside. That is how we learn who we are. And this is precisely why we want for them to be greater than we. Because when a Jew sits down and learns, we cannot possibly see all of the levels and all of the implications of everything that we're learning. We only see it to a certain depth and breadth. When the Gentiles are born, we can then see the deeper implications of what we intended in them. So we learn who we are when we look at ourselves in the magnifying mirror that is Gentile existence. They become the embodiment of who we are. Therefore, it's very, very important that as good parents, we wish for them to be greater than we. A Jew must get to the level. Listen to me and listen to me carefully, because I know that this is hard to accept. A Jew must get to the level where the major source of their joy and the major source of their nachat, their peace and serenity, is watching the Gentiles be happy and healthy and fulfilled and expressing the best that is in them. Until we reach that level of intention for the Gentiles, we have not reached the level that is called bטול, and neither will we be at peace. Because there is no such thing as a parent being at peace if they are at odds with their children. The ultimate peace is shlom bayit, is peace within the home. There is no healthy parent who begrudges their child being greater than they, even if that's sometimes frightening. It's scary, you know, when you see that your child is more intelligent than you or more technical than you, and you're afraid that they're going to look at you and you're going to look small in your eyes. And yet with that, you're very, very proud of them. Even with that, you encourage them, and you do everything you can to bring that out, even if that means that you will look small in their eyes. That they'll look at you and say, "Ah, Mom, ah, Dad, don't you see? Just press a couple of buttons here and it also, you know." Even with that, even knowing that they might think less of us, we still strive to make them greater and more, and do everything we can for their growth and their advancement. And it's exactly the same relationship that the Jews have to have toward the Gentiles. Thank you for listening.